Hi, I'm Mike Bellevue, and I'm here at Prickett's Fort, which is right outside Fairmont, West Virginia. This is a beautiful recreated frontier fort. The original Prickett's Fort was built in 1774 by Jacob Prickett, and it was built during Lord Dunmore's War to protect the settlers on the Monongahela River from the ravages of the Mingo and Shawnee Indians. Now, it's kind of interesting. You might wonder, why is it called Prickett's Fort and not Fort Prickett? And that goes back to a naming convention that was set up during the French and Indian War, where government forts that were established by the army or by the state or the colony at the time, were called Fort something. So you've got Fort Pitt, Fort Bedford, Fort Ligonier, and those are all government forts. Then you've got places like Robinson's Fort in Perry County, Pennsylvania, and that was built by the Robinson family to protect local settlers in Perry County during the French and Indian War. So if it's a private fort, it's a name and then fort. So Prickett's Fort is a private fort built by Jacob Prickett. And it has been beautifully recreated here. So before we go to the School of the Longhunter, let's just take a look at the fort. Well, here we are at the main gate of Prickett's Fort. So let's go in and take a look around. All right, so you can see a lot of the cabins here are built right into the wall of the fort, and that's very common. You'll see the same thing if you go to Fort Boonesborough in Kentucky. But then you've got a group of cabins right down through the middle of the fort here. And most of those are more of the professional, the gunsmith's cabin, that sort of thing. Well, when they rebuilt this fort, they spent years researching construction techniques used on various frontier forts. And most of the logs used to build it were reclaimed from old cabins and barns. So these are original hand-hewn timbers. And you can see very clearly the axe marks. I did a beautiful job on it. Well, I get a lot of questions from people who want me to show more of my camp. And there's really not that much to see. But we're here at Prickett's Fort, School of the Longhunter. This is Thursday, it's setup day. So you'll see people in modern clothes and a few trucks around as people are setting up their camps. But I'll give you the nickel tour. As I said, my camp's pretty simple. Here's my kitchen. I tend to cook on a charcoal brazier, which is right here. We got a couple of water buckets in case the fire gets out of control, teapot, and that's it. And as you can see, the brazier is set into a fire pit so I don't burn up any grass underneath it. And from there we move to my living room, which is under the awning here. Living room and dining room. We got a folding table, folding chair. Usually I bring a Windsor chair with me. This time I did not. Candle lanterns. I'll have several up at night. Right now I don't have it out, but this is my rifle stand, my rifle, and that hook up there would hold my shot bag, and there's my axe. And then here's the tent, which would be my bedroom. So I use a cot, wool blankets. That is actually a greatcoat, a wool coat on top of it, but it's beautiful today, probably close to 70, so we don't need it. Little folding stool I use for a table, and the chest that holds my clothes and gear. On the bench there's a water container. My cooler is in that, along with my trash. And that canvas over there is covering up a couple of bags of charcoal. And now if we swing around to the other side of the tent, this is my pantry. So, dishes, silverware are in here. Cups, sugar, spices, strong drink, salt and pepper. All that stuff goes in here. Got another one with lanterns, and another one that has ironware, like my sledgehammer, frying pans, that sort of thing, and it's all covered up with an oilcloth in case it rains. And that is the entire camp. Now, this was the 25th annual edition of the School of Longhunter, and this is the medal that they struck to commemorate it that all of the participants received. The School of the Longhunter is the longest running event of its type in the country. And its type is kind of unique. It's kind of a combination of rendezvous and seminar. And it discusses all things 18th century, not just the Longhunters. So it's really pretty fascinating. I'm going to introduce you to some characters and we'll tell you what went on. Gregg Bray is the executive director of Prickett's Fort State Park. And he's the honcho of this whole deal. And he's been here since day one. He volunteered for 10 years, and then he's worked professionally at Prickett's Fort for the last 26 years, first as a blacksmith, and now as the overall executive director. And what he does is he collaborates with the volunteer program director, Billy Schneider. And together they come up with the list of speakers and the events, and they usually work a year ahead. And they try to keep each year different and interesting. So I'll let you know a little bit of what went on this year. So each day we had 2 to 3 seminar sessions a day. And this was in the visitor center and basically an auditorium setting. And they were pretty interesting. I mean, we had Beth Kennedy give a talk about Indian captives. And she's an educator and an author, and her family history has captives, people who were captured by the Indians during raids, and just a fascinating talk. And then Willie Frankfurt told us how to kind of match our gear to our gun and our persona, and that was excellent. And we had a talk on Native American dogs, and then my favorite discussions, I have to say, were the ones that featured Mark Baker, and he was the keynote speaker. And on Saturday we had 2 discussions by him, one that talked about the 900-year history of English people bearing arms, and that was fascinating. It was basically the talk that led up to Lexington and Concord and the shot heard around the world. A lot of great information. And then his second talk was about his 40 years in living history and what he's learned. And if you don't know Mark Baker, he is one of the premier writers and authors in the living history game. He's written for Muzzleloader magazine, has written a number of books, and he was the one who was the technical advisor on the movies Last of the Mohicans and The Patriot. So he taught Daniel Day-Lewis and Mel Gibson and Heath Ledger how to shoot, how to run and load, how to act like they knew their way around a flintlock rifle. And he had plenty of anecdotes on that, and it was really fascinating. So nobody wants to spend all their time in the classroom, and there were plenty of activities to break that up. And my favorite was the duel. This was kind of crazy. I mean, they got us outside, they set up a couple of paper targets 10 paces apart, and they loaded up flintlock pistols with paintballs. And we shot against each other. Whoever had the best shot moved on to the next round, and it was really pretty wild.
Shooters ready?
So there must not have been a night.
Hey, he's getting closer. Shooters ready?
That's my guess. It don't matter.
Well, there was not.
Fire!
Well, what I learned is when you shoot paintballs in a muzzleloader, you can't exactly depend on reliable performance. So this was a little different, but it really was a lot of fun. When all the smoke had cleared, Tim Neal was the winner of the paintball duel competition. And as you can see, he was pretty pleased with it. And of course, there was plenty of time just to socialize. Unstructured free time where you could catch up with old friends, and I had plenty of old friends there, and meet some new friends. And I was lucky enough to make several new friends there. And that's what going to these events is all about, really. It's about the camaraderie, and everything you learn is just icing on the cake. Friday evening, we all gathered at the meeting house to have a potluck supper, and it was delicious. And it's great to get everybody together. Everybody shares a dish, and we can all just sit and talk. And we had an absolutely wonderful time. And after that, we got a campfire going, and we just relaxed out under the stars, shooting the breeze and sipping a few beverages. On Friday, after the seminars, we had an award ceremony followed by a raffle and an auction. And there were plenty of prizes given out. Saturday night, we had Tavern Night. And that was arranged by Heather Schneider. And she's an 18th century cooking expert. And she really pulls out all the stops for this. She made a variety of period-correct drinks that we could sample. There was Hut Bourbon Cider Punch, Fish House Punch, Captain Radcliffe's Punch, and Sangaree. And it was all good. And we all had a lot of good times sampling those brews and just shooting the breeze in the meeting house under the candlelight. It's kind of hard to beat. Well, this was my first time attending the School of the Longhunter, but you can bet it won't be my last time. Greg and Billy have plans for the upcoming years to keep things fresh. There'll be a lot more hands-on activities, and just in general, there's always going to be something new to learn. So maybe I'll see you here next year.